Hello, everybody, and welcome back for Unplugged Live, the series where I have real and honest conversations with remarkable individuals who have made real change in their journey up to this point to get them where they are today and to support both their mental and physical well-being in a way that has changed their lives for the better. And today I am so glad to be joined by Kim Raysmith, who is the founder of Reconstruct Drinking. And Kim is a mother of two young children and a senior executive in the construction industry who, as a means of struggling with her stress and anxiety and her own mental health, she turns to a place of really kind of a dark place she talks about, which led to eventually an alcohol addiction. And eventually it did lead to a point where she actually found out that she was pregnant, where things really started to change and knew that she needed a fundamental shift in order to keep moving forward in her life. So I'm really, really excited to be chatting to Kim today. And I see she has just joined. So I'm going to add her in. There we go. Hello.
Oh, sorry about that. Technology.
All good, all good. We got there in the end. How are you going today?
Yeah, I'm great. Really good to speak to you.
That's good. That's good. Well, I gave a brief introduction about, I guess, you and the work that you do, but I'd
Yeah.
love to always start it with a bit of a check-in to see how it is that you are going. So, if you were to say on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is absolutely awful and 10 is feeling amazing, on top of the world, where do you reckon you're sitting today?
Well, speaking of a 10, but I like to see it as more. Um, Today I'm whole, and 5 years ago I didn't even feel like half a person. I felt like less than a quarter of a person. I remember when I was at the shopping centre, I was at that point towards the end that I used to have a drink of alcohol when I went to the shops. I used to buy little bottles and have them with me. And I remember walking down the aisle of the shops and looking at all these people doing their shopping, being normal. And I didn't even feel like a person anymore. But today, I feel whole. I feel like I'm a person again. So, and that's just amazing.
What an incredible reflection. And, we'll get into a lot more about your journey. I'm really keen to have a bit of a chat about that. Which will be no doubt an eye opener, but also really helpful, I think, for a lot of people today. But also, I guess if we were to do a bit of a check in over the past 18, 24 months collectively, how do you reckon you've been going?
Well, in the past year, it's been a big change. Before this year, I stopped drinking about 5 years ago, and I've been on a journey of self-discovery. Um, but what I found when I stopped drinking was the alcohol-induced anxiety went away, but there was still more growing anxiety, and with work stress, that anxiety grew. So more than 20 months ago, I was still very stressed and very anxious, and I didn't have those tools to manage it. So now that I took away the alcohol, it was bringing up all this stuff. Um, at the beginning of this year, I moved back to my hometown of Perth, WA, and from Canberra. I was in Canberra for 10 years. And I took that opportunity to step back into yoga. So I've studied to become a vinyasa yoga teacher. And I stepped into meditation, breath work, and then I've also to become a This Naked Mind certified coach. So it's been a really busy year, but it's also a year of grounding. So um, this year has just been about coming from a high stress, high go, 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 working all on. I was the president of the National Association for Women in Construction over there. I volunteered all my time. I was in charge of big projects to let's learn how to actually function in the world on a different level, you know. So, yeah. And towards the now, I've gone through all these courses as well to really deepen my understanding of yoga. Yoga's always been in my life, but to deepen that, I'm a lot more grounded. I am able to use my breath and use my body to manage my life the way that I want to, a way that's working. And and I give back. I give back to the people that I work with.
Fantastic. And what a shift that's been. I'd love, we've touched on a little bit there about, we've talked a bit about your life and your experience working in the construction industry. You've touched a little bit about there, an addiction that you've had with alcohol. And I'd love to, I guess, really just dive into a lot of that now. But first, before we get into that, I'd love to know a bit more about you. So who is Kim? What is it that have been kind of the pivotal moments in your life and your journey that have got you to this point, all the way from as far back as you can remember?
Yeah. So I describe myself as an introvert extrovert. And, when I was younger, I didn't know how to get that extrovert out of me. And so, when I discovered alcohol around, 14, that gave me an answer. It was all this stuff that was in me could suddenly come out. And when you're young, that created really strong neural pathways in my mind. Here's an answer. Here's the thing you can take, and then you can be the person that's inside of you that you couldn't out. And that was, really the start of me using that as a tool to help me work through life. And fast forward a few years, I worked in hospitality, so alcohol became a really big part of my life. It was how I made money. It's how I made friends, and all those neural pathways kind of came together just to reinforce, yes, this is the way, this is what you do, this is how you make friends. A sense of belonging was always a big thing for me. So I felt, unfortunately, early on in my life that I didn't belong. I had this sense of, I wanted to belong and friends. And so when alcohol came along, that was another answer. Like, oh, if you have alcohol, you can be friends with anyone. You can belong to anyone as long as you have this thing in common. And so again, that was another answer to a question when you're young. And so, I was very social. I am a very social person. So I've got a lot of energy and I love to get out there. So, the partying kind of lifestyle, was, again, another thing. Oh, you need alcohol to do these things, and therefore you have a good time. And then, so it answered all of my questions. But nobody told me how it was. Nobody told me, that underlying anxiety that was there that would actually make it worse, So, as everybody does when they're young, you party, you take drugs. I mean, I did party drugs, things like that. But alcohol was always the consistent thing. And, I traveled overseas, I went crazy. And that was great in a way. But when I came home, I was smoking, I was drinking, and I didn't like myself. I didn't know who I was anymore. And so I went, I met a guy, and he was, I went into a really narcissistic relationship. But that relationship controlled me, and it actually he didn't drink, so I stopped drinking and I stopped smoking. And I thought that was the end, that I didn't have any control of myself, and so there was something wrong with me. Therefore, I stayed with this person for a really long time because I didn't have any control. I thought there was something wrong with me. Therefore, I gave my power to somebody else, and that was really challenging. And so when I left that relationship, I had to learn how to grow on my own. But I still didn't have the answers at that stage. I still thought there was something fundamentally wrong with me, because I went back into drinking and, but I was like everybody else still. Binge drinking on the weekends, drinking throughout the week, but I was consistently drinking. And then what happened, and I got into construction then. And so, you know, I was work hard, play hard, drink hard. You know, I could keep up with the boys. That was who I was. You know, you know, that was my claim to fame. And that was who I was, you know. But then something happened. And in around 2007, I had a big bike accident, cycling accident, and I was hit by a car. And I had a spinal injury, had a crushed L1, and I was at home by my own for a couple of months, horizontal in a back brace. But what happened was that all my tools went away. So I used to exercise a lot and work a lot. That's how I managed my life, and that's how I controlled my drinking. Um, and what I found was I couldn't stop drinking, and I was scared. I was like, "What's wrong with me? Why? Why am I doing this? Why aren't I reading a book and watching a movie?" And yet I still felt like, you know, I had to drink all the time. So I went to a doctor and I was like, "What's wrong with me? You know, I can't stop drinking." And this is the first time I really thought I had a problem, and I really recognized it, problem. And, you know, she said to me, you know, "Oh, well, go to AA." Like, I'm not going to go to AA. Like, you know, I need more control. I need more control. That's what's wrong with me. I don't have any self-control. So, you know, I made a full recovery, fortunately, with my back. You know, so I went about just controlling my life. That was it. I was weak, I thought, and I had to control everything. So I tried to control everything. Fast forward, I had to move to Canberra. That was ago. And this was my husband, I got married, and I found he was away a lot. He worked overseas all the time. And so I had lost all of my social connections, and I was very lonely. And so alcohol was my friend, and I drank, and was also in I was in a senior role in working in the and so I managed that stress and anxiety with alcohol because it was all I knew. I didn't know anything else. And so, you know, the loneliness and those two things combined started to see me go down a path that I didn't like. And that was quite scary at the time. And I knew deep down there was a problem, but I kept ignoring it. Now, of course, I'm in my late 30s here, so I'm trying to have a baby at the same time. And, you know, eventually, after, you know, a long time, I was lucky enough to have two children. And it was funny, you know, that when I got pregnant, I was able to stop just like that. And I couldn't believe it. And it was the best. It was like, yes, this is what I wanted. I want to stop. And I always thought, no, I'll never drink again after this. You know, this is always what I wanted. I didn't want to drink. I wanted to be in control and not have it consuming my thoughts all the time. But of course, once the babies came, I couldn't stop drinking, and I kept thinking, what's wrong with me? What is wrong with me? I have these two beautiful children. And, you
Can I
know,
ask at that point, sorry to interrupt you, at that point, can I ask, what is it that was that initial, you know, seed thought that after you'd had these two babies that was going on in your mind that led you to go back to drinking?
it was the anxiety. So I wasn't coping with anything. I had all this time on my hands. I had these little babies, or, you know, one baby and then two. And then I wasn't working. So all the control measures that I had in my life that, you know, kept me in line were all gone. Everything was off the table. I had no family around. I had no support. I had a husband who was absent. And I had these very strong old neural pathways that were still there from those years of drinking, and it was still the answer. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the understanding of how the brain works. So of course, it started very fast. And, you know, when you're home alone with all this time on your hands and you're feeling, I had post anxiety out of control, you do what you know. And it was all I knew. And it was really very much shameful. There was a lot of shame involved.
Do you feel like, I know from speaking to people in the past that have suffered from addiction in various shapes or form, they often talk about how it's either used to kind of fill a bit of a hole or a gap, or else it's also as a way to, I guess, shield over that needing to almost face yourself, that by it's really a distraction or a way to numb out or something like that. Would you, how would you describe your experience when you got to that point? Did it feel like that for you? Was it like filling a hole or a gap, or was it that you just felt like you needed to numb out from the situation, or perhaps just not meet yourself, come up face to face with those,
Yep,
the inner shadow, I guess?
it was all of those things, and it was really how I coped. It was a with feeling overwhelmed with life, with these children, and I think there was a big lack of self-love. And, at that time, I didn't know what that meant, how to do it, or how to get self-love. And so I was just on each day, it was like, well, how do I cope with this? Okay, today let's try and stay out of the house. I tried to stay out of the house so I wouldn't drink, for as long as possible. And you can't do that all the time with little children. And it was the loneliness, and there was deep selfish that I faced, and I didn't know how to. Even when it was like, well, how do I go about doing that? I felt like there was a brick wall everywhere I sat. I didn't have the support. I didn't know how to turn. I felt very isolated and alone. And because I thought an addiction, you had to have serious trauma. Something would have had to happen to you as a child. And there's many people who identify that. And I didn't have that. So I didn't feel worthy. And so I wasn't worthy of having it. Therefore, there was something wrong with me. I have to have more control. You can't tell anyone, you're not that type of person. Get your shit together. That was what I was telling myself. Really hard negative stuff on myself. And it's actually is what you need to be doing, is what I know now. All the things I didn't know then.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Like, I heard you at the beginning talk about how when you started initially noticing that this behavior was, ongoing, and it wasn't a once-off type of thing, that you said, I need to do better, better than this, and it was that kind of critiquing type words or judgmental language or narrative that was really there. Whereas often with addiction, there is a lot of shame can be associated, as you just mentioned. And actually in those times, what we need is, whether it's compassion or self-love or whatever way you put it, just to be a little bit nicer to ourselves. But often it's the reason why you can be so judgmental, or why the addiction has started in the first place, is because that relationship that, is with yourself has maybe not been off to a great start. Would that be something that you would identify with or resonate with?
Very much so. And that came from a young age, that I wasn't good enough. And I think a lot of people feel that I had that there was always something wrong with me. I had to try harder, and very much the negative self-talk that I wasn't even aware of till after I started to go on the sobriety journey, that I realised what all the language in my head started to change. And language in your head and how you talk to yourself really is a key to starting to step out of this. And that's how you start to grow the self-love in you. And I didn't know any of that. So yes, there was very much. That's right, very much.
And the awareness of it, I guess, because for so long, and so many of us are really unconscious to that narrative that's constantly on replay. And you talked a lot about neural pathways and how they were kind of conditioned as you were growing up as well, and how different sorts of behavior became your way to overcome those, which weren't necessarily in the most helpful of light. But another thing I wanted to touch on is you mentioned, a few times there working in the construction industry, and how, you know, your journey through that world, and particularly in a quite a senior role, led to very much a stressful and an anxiety-inducing journey or path or experience. How would you describe your experience during that time? And I know you still very much work in the construction industry in similar vein, but also in a very different vein as well. You know, particularly as a female, you know, in what traditionally is seen as quite a male-dominated industry. I'd love to hear more about your experience there.
Yeah. So being in the construction industry meant I was successful. I was tough. I played with the boys. I'm as good as you. I had to prove myself, you know. And I love the construction industry. It's given me so much, you know, confidence within myself, and I can hold my own in, you know, all the boys. And I work hard to get women to come into the construction industry. So it was that mentality that I had, you know, that I had to be like that, and really I didn't have to. Now I've really come, you know, around or 180 degrees. You can actually bring your own femininity into this, you know, and you know, through NAWIC, the National Association for Women in Construction, you know, I mentor people, women, to come into the industry, and it's like, you don't have to be tough and hard ass and drink with the boys and all of that. You bring yourself in, you know. But I didn't know that back then. I thought I had to be the image, that person, and so, you know, the alcohol, all of that was a part of that for me. That's what I did. And now I realize I don't have to be that way to be successful in a male-dominated industry. Women bring their own unique personal things and benefits to the industry that help helping develop and change the industry to be less male-dominated, and to, you know, work together and bring about great projects.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Like that notion of feeling the need to change and be someone other than who you are. And then there's always a disconnect, and there's always going to be a disconnect if that feeling is there, because regardless of how it is that you're showing up, it's actually not you, you know, and you're always kind of feeling that need to put on a face or to be someone different or to be harder or tougher. And I know from my own experience, even speaking to others who have worked in the construction industry, both from a female and male counterparts, is that, you know, even that notion of it needing to be tough and hard and be one of the boys, whatever that means, that actually that doesn't do anyone any favors. And even for the males within the industry, because, you know, those, I guess, characteristics or traits that we see as, you know, traditionally more feminine, as being kind of empathetic and kind and compassionate, you know, and understanding and that, whereas the more traditional male or masculine characteristics, which we see of, you know, the be more, do more, push more, that neither male or female, masculine, feminine, neither one of us are 100% either way. You know, we've all got elements of both within us, but even on one side, as you mentioned, you know, not feeling like you could lean into that kind of more nurturing side, but also how males within the industry seem to not feel like they can touch into that side either, you know, that they have to really push the be more, do more, push, like, you know, be better type mentality. And that's why I know from a mental health perspective, I've seen such incredible, and I'm sure you could really speak to this, such just disheartening rates in terms of mental health and suicide. And, you know, it really, really tough for everyone feeling like they can't actually show up as themselves, which is a really difficult and challenging place to be.
That's right. And it can be very isolating, especially when you're on the tools, on big projects. Nobody knows anyone. And look, suicide and mental health in the construction industry is incredibly high. And you know, we can start to change that, and bringing more women in to start to change the mentality that you don't need to be, you know, tough, and you don't have to put on a facade. All those things are starting to come out, and you know, bringing that awareness to what's important, and dropping our facades, you know, being able to be open to drop our facades, and having the tools and facilities available for people to be able to talk about that and not have to be, you know, this tough macho image. It's happening. It's starting to, the wheels are turning in that direction, and I've seen it change over the time that, you know, the last 15 years I've been in the industry, in particular in the last, you know, 4 or 5 years. It's great to see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have, you know, now we have a lot of men who are members, and you know, 50-50 men that come to events now and things like that. So yeah, it's really great.
That's brilliant, and like I love to hear, and it's very heartening to hear that as you said, the wheels are turning and the conversations are starting, and long may they continue because it's needed, that's for sure. But I know you mentioned, you know, in conversations that we've had in the past, that there was on your own journey a very pivotal moment that really sticks out to me in particular around what was the I guess the final nail in the coffin, or that point that really made you fundamentally shift your world for the better, which was related to, you know, after you've had one of your babies. I'd love you to maybe talk a little bit about that if you're open to doing that. So
Yeah. So I'd had my second child. I have 2 boys, and Sam, he was about 8 months old, and I woke up one morning, and my husband just turned to me and he said, "Do you remember last night?" And I looked at him and I went, "Oh my God, I can't remember." And all these things went through my head, like had I burnt the house down, but I knew I'd drunk last night, and you know, as I did, you know, every night, I would, you know, put I would, it's breastfeeding, right? So you would try and breastfeed, and then you knew you had 8 hours, and then you'd go and have, you know, a whole lot of drinks because you knew drink and get it out of your system in time before, you know, the baby would wake up in the morning. But that night, I had done what I did every night, which was feed the baby, and then I drank, you know, probably over a bottle of wine, maybe a bottle and a half, and I fell asleep, and with my baby out in my arms, and then I let go of him in my sleep, and he fell onto the floor, onto his head, and he screamed the house down. And luckily my husband was there. I mean, he's away often, but and I didn't wake up. The shame of being told that in the morning absolutely just destroyed me. I was a mess, and I knew this wasn't about me anymore, and I had my why, and that was it. I knew I had to stop drinking. I was too ashamed that I could hurt one of my, and so that sent me on the journey. But the journey isn't a straight line. So, you know, it was probably 2 years of seeking help and start drinking, you know, until I was really, you know, at that point that I was ready to, that I finally said, got it, and that, you know, This Naked Mind was really what helped turn that over, and that's why I've become a This Naked Mind sobriety coach. But that opened the doors that all the other help that I had didn't, because it gave me the mindset change, the belief change, and it showed me all the stuff, all the science of the mind. There was nothing wrong with me, but you know, that shame, and it got rid of all the shame inside of me, you know, that this wasn't me, shame, a bad person. It was like, no, this is alcohol. This is what it works in your mind. These are your beliefs. And once you start to unwind all of that, you know, it's like the door opens and you get your life back. And and you can leave it behind. And I was able to leave it behind, and that's when I got my excitement for life back. Yeah. So
Can you tell me a little bit more about the process that you underwent with Naked Minds for anyone who's listening who might not be familiar with them and them as an organization? How might they differ, or would that process differ from the likes of, say, AA that people might be more familiar with?
yeah, I mean, I went to AA too, so and AA is a part of my journey. But when I still felt, even though I stopped drinking for a long time with AA, I was a little bit stop-start there, I still felt trapped. I felt like I was missing out. I felt like there was something wrong with me, that I was now I wasn't like the rest of the world. I was, somebody who was in this box now and, was always missing out. And that there was just something wrong with me. So when Annie Grace is a best-selling author of this methodology, which is about the science of the mind, or it breaks down all the social reasons and then digs into your self-beliefs. And it's your beliefs that drive your thoughts drive your feelings and emotions that drive behaviour, thinking. And when I found her, this was a few years on in my journey, she has podcasts in the book, I just couldn't get enough of it. I was like, oh my God, it gave me all the answers. And I really felt like I was just this person released out of jail. That's how it felt. And I could just start dancing again and going, no, you're fine. My brain is extremely efficient at taking the fastest route to pleasure away from pain that I was in, because that was all it knew. And now I was actually able to understand with knowledge what was happening in my brain. And knowledge is power. Knowledge is the key for understanding what's going on inside. And once you understand, you can then start pulling apart, like the layers of onion, the parts of yourself. And that takes time. So I had to take some time to start to look at me and go, well, what are my beliefs? What are my, my issues with myself? Once my language, and start talking to myself differently and start to identify those things that, because it's not alcohol. Alcohol is just a symptom. I had to look at all the things what I was pushing down with alcohol.
Yeah.
Then I actually started to grow as a person. And this flower started to bloom in me that I never thought would be possible, because I thought I was this terrible person, and that I wasn't the person. Everybody else was fine, but it told me that it wasn't. There was nothing wrong with me, and finding yourself again is just the most life-changing thing, and that's why I wanted to and gone on to do the thing I'm doing now, because I have to reach out to other women and men to say, no, that it's not true. Let me show you. Believe in yourself. You can do this, and it's worth it. Like, your life is beautiful. Life is beautiful. Taking out all the crap that you've unfortunately learned how to cope with life. And when you start learning to cope with, the real tools of life, and learning to face your fears, stepping into your fear and looking at it head on, and walking through that is the way forward. I always say you got to walk through the mud to get to the ocean, but the ocean.
So true. So true. And I think, as you touched on there, it very much never ceases to amaze me how often it just takes for someone to say, it's okay, and to speak to your experience as well, and for you to hear it come from someone else to say, yeah, that's me, I resonate with that. But sometimes I guess feeling like no one in the world could possibly understand this or ever feel this way. I'm the only one. And that's where often a lot of the shame comes from too. And to start to, I guess, break down those walls and understand that you're not the only one, and that people do go walk this path that you've been on, but also that there's, as you said, there is an ocean at the end of the mud, whereas sometimes when you're in it, it can feel like it's just mud around you and that there's no way out. Yeah, so
I want to, you know, it is my purpose to show people that they can do it, because I thought I could never do it. I thought everybody else was the successful people, and that there was something wrong with me, and I could never do what other people do and get through. But you can, and you will, and it's there, and it's a journey, and it doesn't happen instantly, and everybody has their own puzzle, and you're unique, and you have to find the bits that fit and get the help here, and there's all these things that make up you, and sometimes you got to break that puzzle apart and just start again, you know. And you know, from somebody who was broken, I want to help people. I want to inspire people that it is worth it. I think there was so much that fear that I thought, well, I could put it all back together, and then, you know, I'm still going to hate it. I can't see the ocean. Is it really worth it? You know, you don't know. And it's like, yes, it is. It is. It's life. Life is beautiful when you're actually living it, and you're being, and you can handle the ups and downs. You know, they're not as bad. Alcohol or drugs or whatever that is that you're doing make everything worse. And just finding that way out, your unique path, you know, that is what anyone who's struggling needs to find their own path. Yeah.
beautiful. And I just saw someone there mention so beautifully said, and I couldn't agree more. I'd love, you know, you talked about your purpose there and what it is that, you know, you're on a mission to do now with both the work that you do as a naked mind coach, but also Reconstruct Drinking, the organization that you've set up yourself. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the work that you've been doing, especially in changing the narrative that we all already spoke about in the construction industry in particular.
Yeah. So, you know, the construction industry is really important to me. You know, I'm still in the industry. I'm still with, you know, NOAC, but alcohol education, I think, is a key. Knowledge is power and understanding. So, and I always thought back, you know, well, how could have I been different or gone on this journey a lot earlier? You know, gosh, you know, I was like 40, nearly 40 when I started on this journey, and I'm 46 now, nearly 47. Oh God! But if I had the knowledge given to me in a work environment, at least about the science of the mind, and that would have been at least a way in, and then also socially. So, you know, we live in this world that everything, oh, it's wine o'clock. Hey guys, we've got beers, you know, and changing that narrative around to just, hey, who wants a drink? Are you drinking alcoholic or non-alcoholic tonight? Okay, great, no worries. And I have like this motto that we need to start changing our language when we're in a work environment about no thanks, no worries. If you say no thanks to an alcoholic beverage, all you need to say is no worries. Not questioning of why, what's wrong with you? I mean, I've been yelled at by a manager once. He was like, what are you, an alcoholic? Ha ha ha. And, you know, I was actually sober then, and it hurt. It really hurt. And I wanted to get up and yell at him and go, do you know the pain that I've been through, the struggle? How can you just yell that out to everyone? You know, so it's bringing awareness that everybody has a choice, and alcohol's not going away, but there is a movement now, and so many people are choosing it for different reasons. Maybe you had a problem, maybe, you know, maybe it's your religion, or maybe you just want a better health. That's okay, and that we need to, you know, as people and managers in a group, make people feel like they belong no matter what they're drinking. You know, alcohol to belong. It's like, no, we need to just come together as people and put something in our glass, you know, and that might be a non-alcoholic champagne or a non-alcoholic. And that's a key message that I bring through in the construction industry as well. Changing that. And, you know, those self issues, they're really, you know, the one-on-one stuff that you do unwind with people, but make sure there's services available for people. And if we can bring that out, we can capture people before they get down that pointy end of AA and rehab. And, you know, there's lots of services for people who are really bad, but what about everyone else? You know, the other people that are struggling and stuff. It's like, it's almost like you have to wait till your life's over and you've, you know, had all these terrible incidences before you're like, oh, well, I'm really bad now. You know? Whereas we can change that. We have this opportunity now. We have all this knowledge and information that wasn't around 5 years ago when I started. It's only really come about in the last few years that we have this great understanding. So it's a great form and a way to spread that. So Reconstruct Drinking is getting out there to the construction industry, giving these talks, giving that information, getting inspired, you know, and really having some fun with it, you know. I also run a social group called Sober Party People. And we get out there, we have social events and support group as well. So the biggest thing for me was when I stopped drinking, I thought I'd never have fun again because I related fun to alcohol, you know. But it's like, no, it's not. In fact, I have more fun now that I don't drink. And it's just about giving that encouragement and showing people, no, you know, you got to get through it a bit. Maybe it's not quite fun at first, because you've got to be changing your brain around. But, you know, Sober Party, you know, I think, you know, alongside that is, you know, life's still fun. We can still get out there along at work and really encourage that, and that's, you know, promoted by our management and everybody who's there. You know, it's not questioned.
That's awesome. And I mean, I haven't got experience working in the construction industry, but I have experience definitely being Irish, and that in and of itself comes with its own, I guess, you know, stereotypes too. And I've definitely been on the receiving end of a lot of those comments and remarks over the years as someone who kind of gone in and out of drinking socially. But yeah, kind of, what's wrong with you? Like, oh, you will, you know. It's like, oh no, I really don't want to. Like, you know, and then having that ability to just respect decisions and respect choices regardless of what they may be, just because they are what the person chooses, and neither is right or wrong. It's just, as you said, no drink, no worries, or whatever it might be, whether it's drink or drugs or whatever it might be. You know, why does it have to be? It's no reflection on you. Often what it is just a discomfort that lies with that other person, because sometimes they feel maybe their choices are being questioned, which is the hard part.
It holds up the mirror. It holds up the mirror of their own issues. And most people are only thinking about themselves. But there is our culture, and it's about starting to change that a little bit. And when you start to change something, you start to head in a different direction, even if it's only a few degrees, you know. And being able to give that understanding to people, and people, you know, when I give the talks, they're like, oh yeah, you know, of course, I never thought of it like that. People just don't think about it like that because that's how we've been brought up. Like in Ireland and Australia, we're really similar. You know, people see alcohol as, oh, I want you to belong and I want to reward you. Have a beer, have a wine. That's how I've been brought up. They haven't thought any differently. So we're starting to turn that on its head, going, no, I want you to belong and I want to reward you too. Let's do it in a different way, you know.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. So if anyone watching wants to learn more about you or get in touch, how might they find you?
Okay, they can find me on reconstructdrinking.com. They can find me on Sober Party People on that's a private Facebook group, or on Instagram. And also I've got Kajovi Wellbeing, which is our women's retreats that we do for yoga and wellness. So yeah, you can get me on any one of those, info@reconstructdrinking.com. I'd love to hear from anyone and who'd like to have a talk. It doesn't have to just be construction. I do other industries too, just getting out to the workplaces and stuff and starting to pass this message on. It's really important.
For sure, for sure. And last but not least, if there is there any ask, that we can help you with, or something that you might like to ask either to me or any of the community that may be watching?
I guess that, if you're struggling, get help and get the right help. Don't wait. I waited for so long to get help. I waited till I was right down that end. You don't have to wait, and get the help that's specific to you. If you're, in a narcissistic relationship, get the help for that. If it's alcohol, get the one that's right for that, because I wasted a lot of time doing a whole lot of stuff that didn't really help me, so reach out. You can do it, but it's easier not to do it alone. It's faster not to do it alone. People need people. I'm a big person on belonging and face to face and energy, and that's what human beings are about. So whether we come together via social media, which is amazing, or whether we meet up in our social group or something, that's what being humans about. So don't wait. Reach out. There's nothing wrong with you. That's what I want people to do.
Very, very, very sound advice. Thank you so much. And Kim, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you for being so raw and open and honest. I know I've gotten a lot from this, and I sure as well know that a lot of people watching this after the fact will too. So I appreciate you and all the work that you're doing, and wish you all the best and look forward to chatting soon.
Thank you so much. I really loved this. It's been wonderful. And thanks to everyone who's listening. So, peace.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. Take care. Bye.